There are moments in life that carve themselves into memory with the sharpness of a broken bottle. This story is one of those moments. It belongs to a man named Elias, a man who didn't believe in much until something believed in him. What happened to him wasn't the kind of horror that you walk away from with a shrug. No, it clings to you like the taste of metal in your mouth after a jolt of fear. If you've ever felt the weight of something unseen pressing on your chest in the dead of night, you might already know what I'm about to tell you. But I doubt you've seen it the way Elias did. Sleep is supposed to be a place of rest, a refuge from the weight of the waking world. But for Elias, sleep became a prison, one where he wasn't alone. He was 32, lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old brick building. The kind of place where you can hear your upstairs neighbor's every footstep and the distant hum of the boiler in the basement. It wasn't much, but it was enough for him. He worked night shifts at a shipping warehouse, his schedule flipped upside down, sleeping during the day and working while most people dreamed. But lately, dreams had been hard to come by. It started small, as these things often do. Waking up in the middle of the day, drenched in sweat, his heart jackhammering in his chest. At first, he thought it was stress, long shifts, bad sleep, cheap food. He'd tell himself, "It's nothing, just my body getting used to the new hours." But the dreams kept getting worse. No, not dreams. They weren't dreams. Dreams have a softness to them, a blur around the edges. What he experienced was sharp, clear, like reality had cracked just enough for something else to slip through. The first time it happened, he woke up flat on his back, eyes open, staring at the cracked ceiling, his body frozen stiff. It felt like every muscle in him had locked up tight, as if he'd been dipped in concrete. He tried to move his arms. Nothing. His legs. Useless. He even tried to twitch a finger, just one. But no, he was a prisoner in his own skin. His eyes were the only part of him that still belonged to him, darting wildly around the dim room. Shadows stretched across the walls from the blinds, long and thin like fingers. He told himself, "Don't panic, it's just sleep paralysis. You've read about this. It happens. It's normal." But normal doesn't explain what he saw next. From the far corner of the room where his dresser stood, something shifted. A patch of darkness moved where there shouldn't have been movement. No footsteps, no sound at all, just the slow, deliberate shift of a shadow that peeled itself away from the wall. Elias's heart pounded like it was trying to escape his chest. His mind screamed, "It's just a trick of the light, your brain is panicking, that's all." But then it moved closer. It didn't walk, it slid. Like a stain spreading across fabric, it glided toward him, the shape low and twisted, its limbs bent at strange angles, like it didn't know how to use them properly. His breath caught in his throat, shallow and sharp, like a man drowning in inches of water. The shape reached the foot of his bed and stopped. It didn't move, didn't breathe, it just crouched there watching him. Elias wanted to scream, wanted to bolt upright, punch, kick, run. But his body was still locked in place, frozen by something deeper than sleep. The shape leaned forward, its head tilting too far to the side, like a bird trying to understand a noise it had never heard before. There was no face, just a patch of darkness that sucked in the light around it. But somehow, he knew it was looking at him. He squeezed his eyes shut, heart drumming in his ears. "Don't look at it. Don't look at it. It's not real. It's not real." But he knew. Deep down, he knew. Elias didn't talk about it. Who would he tell anyway? Sleep paralysis wasn't something you called a doctor about. He'd read about it online before. A harmless phenomenon caused by the brain waking up before the body. Simple, logical. He clung to that explanation like a lifeline. But logic isn't much comfort when you're lying in bed, paralyzed, with something crouching at your feet. He tried to brush it off the next day, shaking it from his mind like a bad dream. Coffee, shower, work, repeat. The world moved on. People still cut him off in traffic. His boss still grumbled about missed quotas. Nothing had changed except for the weight in his chest that wouldn't leave. He didn't sleep well the next day, tossing and turning until he finally drifted off. No dreams, no shadows. For a moment, he thought maybe it had been a one-time thing, but it wasn't. It came back 3 nights later, same as before. He woke up on his back, body stiff as a board, heart beating so hard it felt like it might break a rib. His eyes darted to the corner of the room before he even realized why. It was instinctual, like his body knew where it was. The corner was empty. He felt a flicker of relief, like a match trying to stay lit in a storm. See? Nothing, just your brain playing tricks. But then, creak, the slow, deliberate groan of weight on wood. It came from behind him, the other side of the room, the closet. No, no, no. His eyes darted to the edge of his vision, but he couldn't turn his head. He could just barely see the closet door from the corner of his eye. It had been closed when he went to sleep. He was sure of it. It was always closed. He hated sleeping with it open. It wasn't closed now. A gap, maybe 6 inches wide, just enough for something to slip through. His breathing came in shallow, sharp gasps. His chest rose and fell in quick bursts, but he couldn't make a sound, couldn't scream, couldn't even whimper. His ears strained to hear something, anything, but the world had gone so quiet that even his heartbeat felt deafening. He watched the closet, eyes burning from not blinking. It didn't move. He didn't move. For what felt like hours, they stayed like that. Predator and prey, one hiding in plain sight, the other too scared to be sure which one he was. Then, slowly, with that sick, deliberate groan of shifting weight, the door opened just a little wider, 7 inches now. Something low to the ground shifted. It was too fast for him to see clearly, but it was there. The movement didn't come from inside the closet. It came from below, under the bed. His chest heaved. He felt tears pooling in the corners of his eyes. I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming, I'm dreaming. He kept repeating it in his head, as if sheer belief alone could make it true. The breath on his lips felt too real. The cold air tickling the sweat on his neck felt too real. Then the mattress shifted beneath him. Not much, just a little. Like when someone presses their knee into the side of the bed to climb in slowly. A faint give in the springs. Elias's mind shattered into a million jagged thoughts all at once. No, 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 no. He could feel the weight shifting. Not a lot, just enough. His breathing became quick, sharp gasps through his nose. His only option. He couldn't move, he couldn't scream. Then, as if to prove to him that he wasn't imagining it, he felt something touch his ankle. It wasn't a grip, not yet. It was the barest brush of fingers, long thin fingers that didn't press down, just grazed the skin like someone testing the texture of fabric. His eyes clenched shut. Wake up, wake up, wake up. The touch slid up from his ankle to his calf. Slow, purposeful, like whoever, no, whatever it was, wanted him to know it was there. It wasn't hasty. It had patience. And that terrified him more than anything. The pressure lifted, gone. He strained to hear, to sense it, to feel it. There was nothing. Was it still under the bed? Had it left? Was it... Creak. The sound came from directly above him. Don't open your eyes. Don't open your eyes. He squeezed them tighter, every muscle in his face tensed so hard it hurt. He could feel it now, hovering right above his face. That pressure in the air, that change in temperature, like the difference between standing under the sun and stepping into shade. He swore he could hear it breathing, not a human breath, no inhale, exhale, just a low, guttural rasp, like the scraping of something dry being dragged slowly over sandpaper. Then it spoke, not a voice, a whisper made of breaths, right into his ear. Elias. His whole body convulsed, or at least it tried to. Every nerve in him fired at once, and he felt his fingers twitch, just a little. He fought, strained, his mind a storm of rage and terror. "Move! Move!" His pinky twitched again. The rasping breath above him grew slower, deeper, as if it knew. And then it was gone. He could feel his body releasing like a puppet with its strings cut. His arms shot up on instinct. He gasped, choking on his own breath, rolling off the bed and hitting the floor hard. His throat let out a raw, choked scream. Pure panic. He scrambled to his feet, spun to face the bed. Empty. The closet door was wide open. Elias didn't sleep the next day. He stayed up with every light in his apartment on, his back pressed against the living room wall like a man waiting for a siege. His phone sat in his hand, screen glowing faintly. He had searched sleep paralysis demons more times than he'd care to admit. Forums, articles, even videos of people talking about it. They all said the same thing. It's not real, just hallucinations caused by your brain misfiring as you wake up. But that touch on his ankle, that pressure on the bed, that voice, no article could explain that. Hours passed. The sun went down, and every second after that, the apartment felt smaller, tighter. Every shadow stretched just a little longer than it should have. Every creak of the old pipes felt too deliberate. He kept glancing toward the bedroom door, watching for movement in the narrow crack of darkness beyond it. He considered calling someone. But who? His mom? His brother? What was he going to say? "Hey, something climbed on me while I was frozen in bed last night." He could already hear the awkward silence that would follow. No one would believe him. So he stayed awake until his body betrayed him. At 3:47 a.m., exhaustion claimed him. His head dipped forward, his phone slid from his hand, and his eyes shut on their own. Just for a second, just 1 second. That was all it took. He woke up with a sharp jolt, eyes snapping wide open. Something was wrong. Wrong. His head was tilted back against the wall, his neck stiff and aching. He tried to push himself upright, but no, not again. His arms wouldn't move. His legs wouldn't move. His back was still pressed to the wall, but his body had gone rigid. His head, though, his head could move just a little. He could turn it from side to side, barely an inch. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Not here, not like this, not now. He stared straight ahead at the dim hallway in front of him, lit faintly by the glow of the kitchen light. The bedroom door was at the end of that hall. It was open just a little, not wide, just a crack. 6 inches, maybe 7. He stared at it for so long, his eyes burned. For a moment, he thought maybe he was safe. Maybe it wouldn't come this time. Maybe he'd just wake up like before. But then something shifted. Not in the bedroom. No, it was closer than that. The kitchen light flickered once, twice. Then it went out, snapping the room into a dim, hazy, half-dark. His eyes darted to the bulb overhead. It buzzed faintly, trying to stay alive. Flick, flick, dead. But something was moving in the reflection of the black TV screen in front of him. The TV was off, but the faint glow from the hallway light was enough to show him the reflection of the room behind him. His breathing stopped cold as he watched it unfold in the glassy black surface. Something leaned into view. It didn't crawl, it didn't glide. It unfolded itself, slow and steady, like it had all the time in the world. First a hand, long spidery fingers curling around the back of the couch. Then an arm, stretched too long like the bones had been pulled apart. Its head came next, peeking into frame like a curious animal. No eyes. Just that hollow void where a face should have been. It tilted its head slowly to one side. Elias stared at it. His chest felt like it was about to explode. He could hear the wet, raspy breath behind him, a shallow, uneven sound like air being forced through cracked pipes. He didn't dare move his head, but his eyes stayed locked on the reflection. It knew he was watching. The thing's head jerked toward him with an unnatural snap. Fast, too fast. It didn't tilt. It snapped to face him, its hollow face pointing directly at him. It didn't move for a moment, just stayed there, breathing, watching. Then it began to crawl. Slow, deliberate movements, like it had never used its limbs before. The reflection showed it inching closer, pulling itself forward with sharp, jerky motions. Every twist of its limbs looked painful, like bones cracking back into place. Hand, pull, pull. It was slow, on purpose. Elias's eyes darted back to the hallway. The bedroom door was open wider now, 8 inches, maybe 9. The thing was halfway to him. His heart was a hammer in his chest. He fought with everything he had, every ounce of strength and willpower focused on moving his arm, his right hand, his pinky. Move, damn it, move. He could hear it crawling behind him. He could hear the soft scrape of nails on the hardwood floor. It was right behind him now. He could feel it. The shift in the air, the slow, damp breath on his neck. Don't! The voice rasped behind his ear. Don't move, Elias. Terror exploded in him. Move! Move! He felt something brush the back of his hair. A soft, delicate touch. The way someone might brush a loose thread off your jacket. His pinky moved. The floodgates opened. His body broke free of the invisible chains, and he threw himself forward, gasping and sobbing like a drowning man, surfacing for air. He hit the coffee table, knocking it over, spilling a glass of water across the floor. His head whipped around to face the couch behind him. Nothing. His chest heaved with every breath, his throat raw from the strain. He spun, searching the room, heart wild, mind feral. The kitchen was empty, the hallway was empty. His hands were shaking so badly, he had to grab the edge of the counter to steady himself. But the bedroom door, it was wide open. Elias didn't go back to sleep. He didn't even try. He spent the next 2 days wide awake, forcing himself to stay conscious no matter how heavy his eyelids felt. Energy drinks, black coffee, ice-cold showers, whatever it took. His reflection in the bathroom mirror told him everything he needed to know. Bloodshot eyes sunk into hollow sockets, skin pale and slick with sweat. He looked more like a corpse every hour. But he didn't care. Better to look dead than to be dead. On the 3rd day, his body gave in. No amount of caffeine or shock could keep him upright anymore. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled, and before he knew it, he was on the floor, blinking slowly, too weak to fight. He crawled to the couch, pulling himself onto it like a man crawling from the wreckage of a car crash. His vision blurred, his head spun, and for just a moment, just one moment, his eyes closed. He woke up to the sound of something tapping on glass. Tap, tap, tap. His eyes shot open, and fear rushed in faster than breath could fill his lungs. Where? Where is it? He turned his head slowly, neck stiff and aching. The tap came again. Tap, tap, tap. His eyes scanned the room, jumping to the TV screen, the windows, the kitchen. Nothing. Then it came again, louder. Tap, tap, tap. His eyes locked onto the source, the hallway. No, not the hallway, the bedroom. It was coming from inside the bedroom. His breathing grew shallow, his ribs barely expanding. Don't move, don't breathe. The tapping was steady, sharp, rhythmic, not a knock, not a creak, a deliberate tap, tap, tap against something hard. He knew what it was, the closet door. He sat still on the couch, arms wrapped tight around himself like a child trying to feel safe under a blanket. Ignore it. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. He repeated it over and over, but the tapping didn't care. Tap, tap, tap. His eyes stayed locked on the hallway, every nerve in his body on edge. He didn't blink, didn't breathe too loudly. The tapping stopped for just a second. Silence. Dead air. His heart pounded in that awful stillness, and then, as if it had heard his thoughts, he heard it. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. His whole body stiffened. He gritted his teeth so hard his jaw ached. It wasn't tapping anymore, it was knocking, no mistaking it this time. No pipes, no creaks, no old apartment noises. Someone was knocking from inside his closet. His phone was on the coffee table. It wasn't far, but it felt a mile away. His eyes darted toward it, his mind racing. Call someone, call anyone. He leaned forward, every inch of movement slow, calculated. His fingers reached out. Then it spoke again. No rasp this time, no breathy whisper. It was a voice, a real voice, his voice. Elias. It was faint, distant, but it was his own voice calling his name from inside the bedroom. The sound was wrong. It wasn't just an echo. It had an edge to it, like it had been stretched, worn thin, fraying at the edges. Elias! Terror poured into him like ice water. His legs wouldn't move. His body refused. He sat frozen on the couch, every inch of him locked in place, as if he'd already fallen back into that awful paralysis. Don't go in there. Don't go. Don't listen. Then the voice called again. Elias, come see. He bit down on his lips so hard he tasted blood. His hands were shaking, his fingers twitching like he'd been electrocuted. Don't answer it. Don't answer it. The voice got louder. Elias, I'm waiting. It was right at the edge of the bedroom door now, just around the corner. Close, too close. His eyes burned with tears that he didn't even feel coming. He wanted to scream, to shout, to tell it to leave, but he didn't. He knew, deep down, that if he spoke, it would know exactly where he was. The knocking returned, faster now. Tap, 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 over and over, frantic like someone pounding on a locked door. Elias, come see, come see. The knocking became hammering. Bam, bam, bam. The closet door rattled on its hinges. Come see, the voice bellowed, no longer distant. It was right there, right in the doorway, not behind it, not around it, in it. Elias couldn't take it. His body jolted upright on instinct, his legs carrying him faster than his mind could catch up. He ran, not to the bedroom, never to the bedroom. He sprinted for the front door, fingers fumbling at the locks like he was trapped in a nightmare where everything moved too slowly. He twisted the deadbolt, yanked the chain free, and threw the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. He didn't stop running, barefoot, down the hall, down the stairs, 3 flights. His breath came in ragged gasps, chest tight, muscles screaming. He hit the ground floor and didn't even think about it. He ran out into the street, past cars, past strangers, until he was a full block away. His heart felt like it would split his chest in 2. He finally stopped, leaning against a streetlight, gulping down air as his eyes darted around, looking for it. Did it follow me? He looked back toward his apartment building. No sign of it. He stayed on that street until dawn. No one asked him why he was barefoot, why he looked like he'd just crawled out of his own grave. He didn't care. When morning came, he went back to his apartment, not to sleep. He only stayed long enough to pack a bag, a duffel bag with 2 changes of clothes, his phone charger and his wallet. He didn't look down the hallway, didn't glance at the bedroom. The closet door was wide open. As he zipped up his bag, something soft brushed the back of his neck. A finger, a single cold finger. His breath stopped. He turned so fast he knocked over a chair. Nothing there, just air. But before he left, he heard it. Just once. The closet door creaked. Not much, just a little. And from inside, in a voice so soft it could have been the wind, it whispered, "Don't run. I know where you sleep." Elias left the apartment that day. He didn't take his furniture. He didn't tell his landlord. He didn't tell anyone. He just left. He rented a motel room 5 miles away, a room with no closet, just a bathroom door and a window that barely opened. He slept with the light on that night. No blinds, no shadows, just pale, sterile light. He finally felt safe until he woke up. The first thing he noticed was the weight on his chest. Not a lot of weight, just enough, like someone resting their hands on him, pressing down, gently but firmly. His eyes darted around, wild with terror. His arms wouldn't move, his legs wouldn't move, but his head could turn just a little. The first thing he saw was the bathroom door. It was open, 6 inches. He squeezed his eyes shut, tears streaming down his face. His breath came in rapid bursts through his nose. "Don't look. Don't look." Then he heard it, a soft, deliberate tap, tap, tap against the bathroom door. He opened his eyes. The door was 8 inches open now. "Elias," the voice whispered, closer than it had ever been. His heart stopped. He didn't see it, but he felt it. The presence leaning in close, closer than ever before. "I told you, I know where you sleep." The weight on his chest grew heavier.